Hey guys, I'm back again and I have for you today a video concerning my book club and our long list, which is finally in, and we have a list of 19 books to choose from for our reading list for next year, 2016 to 2017. So from September to about June. Now, the list is varied, so there's some on here you probably have heard of, and there's some that I haven't heard of, but you know, this is all good. This is why we join book clubs. So let's get started with the first book on the list, which everybody knows about because it's sort of made its way around booktube pretty much, and that is The Bees by Laline Pohl. Now this one, as you know, I think it was on the long list or the short list for the Bailey's Women's Prize last year. And this concerns the main character who is a bee, and the story takes place within the bee society kind of thing. So I don't know what it's like, but as you can see, it's on my bookshelf. So it's obviously something that I was interested in reading, and I am still interested in reading it. So this is number one on the list. Maybe we could read next year. Okay, next on the list is Paris by Edward Rutherford. Now, from what I understand, this Edward Rutherford, I think what he does is he writes books about main cities in the world, and I think they are a mix of history and historical fiction, because he usually, well, like for example, this one, Paris, it follows two brothers who grow up in the slums of Montmartre, Paris, and it follows them through time, I think, to maybe a little bit after Napoleon. So I think it's about maybe like end of 19th century to just a little bit after Napoleon. And so what he does is he incorporates quite a lot of aspects of the real history of the place, but he does it through these characters, and apparently he is extremely accurate in what he writes from what I've read. Problem, which I can see from my book club, the problem is going to be the book is 809 pages. Okay, so as you know, that is one thing that usually doesn't go down well with book clubs, is usually when books that are chosen and they're like in the 800, 700, 600, it can be a little touch and go. People usually don't want to read it no matter how good it is. So we'll see. Okay, number 3 on the list is The Baker's Daughter by Sarah McCoy. Now, The Baker's Daughter, I hadn't heard of this one before, so I looked it up, and it's also another type of historical fiction story, but I think what it is, it's family who owns a bakery, and this is during World War II, and they're sort of like, their daughter has made a connection with a young Nazi soldier, and because of that, they are protected from having problems with finding food and, you know, clothes and medication and all that. This book is told a lot like Sarah's Key, if you read that, because it has, the 1940s story during the war, but then you have the modern day story going on as well within it. So that can either work or not. I didn't feel like that worked very well with Sarah's Key, because I felt like the old story was much more interesting and well put together than the modern story. So I don't know. We'll see. All right. The next on the list is, this is the one that I suggested, which is Till the Well Runs Dry. And that is by Lauren Francis Sharma. And this is a piece of Caribbean literature. So I'm hoping that my book club soulmates will choose this, because I don't think we've read very many Caribbean authors. I don't think we've read any Caribbean authors. So it would be great if they could, get on board with this one and pick it. But if you don't know what it's about, it's a glorious and moving saga that sweeps from the 1940s through the 1960s in Trinidad and the United States. Till the Well Runs Dry opens in a seaside village where Marcia Garcia, a gifted and smart-mouthed 16-year-old seamstress, lives alone, raising 2 small boys and guarding a family secret. When she meets an ambitious young policeman, so taken with Marcia that he elicits help from a tea-brewing Obeah woman to guarantee her ardor. The rewards and risk in Marcia's life amplify forever. On an island rich with laughter, calypso, beaches, and salty air, sweet fruits, and spicy stews, Marcia and her policeman move from their sassy and passionate courtship through personal and historical events that threaten Marcia's secret, entangle her children in a tumultuous scandal, and put the future in doubt for them all. Okay, so you can see that's pretty interesting. Next on the list, I also suggested this one because, you know me. Jam on the Vine by LaShonda Catrice Barnett. And this one I suggested because it deals with the press and it deals with, I think, homosexuality as well. And yeah, and I feel like this is one of the books that has literally flown under the radar. Like it was released and, you know, it just didn't get the press it should have gotten. So it didn't get the reviews it should have gotten. You know, nobody read it, or very few people read it. And I've picked this one up because this is one that I wanted to read this year anyway. So even if it doesn't get chosen on the list for my next year, the book club, I will be reading it before the end of the year, because I feel like from the people that I know that have read it, they absolutely loved everything about this book. And I feel like it's a shame that, you know, it doesn't get more press. So yeah, I suggested this one. Okay, next we have Cat's Eye by Margaret Atwood. And this takes place in Toronto, and it's about a controversial painter whose name is Elaine Risley, and it's about the kind of art that she does. And yeah, so it's about friendship and, you know, love, betrayal, childhood, you know, all the things that could be interesting to talk about. So this one, of course, is I think it's a little bit like a classic Margaret Atwood. I think this is one that quite a lot of people maybe have read, you know, maybe it was one of their first ones. If it wasn't The Handmaid's Tale, they read Cat's Eye. So this would be an interesting pick as well for next year. Okay, next on the list we have one. It's called The Breaking of Eggs by Jim Powell. This one I haven't heard of at all, I'll be honest with you. So I have no idea. This one was suggested by someone who, she had read the book. I think she read it like a couple months ago, and she's still talking about it, you know, like she was talking about it at our last book club, and she kept saying how good it really was. This story, this is how it's presented. Read Jim Powell's blogs and other content on the Penguin community. The Breaking of Eggs is a story of the curmudgeonly Felix Zarkowski's Polish by birth, communist at heart, who at age 61 finds that just about everything he has based his life on is crumbling. Separated from him family as a child when the Nazis invaded Poland, Felix is currently living in Paris, and his life's work is a travel guide to the old Eastern Bloc. But unfortunately for Felix, it's 1991. The Berlin Wall has fallen, communism has collapsed, East Germany isn't the economic miracle he wants it to be, and he's forced to confront the fact that his travel writing days are numbered. His guide was a flourishing business, but the old communist descriptions won't do. For Western visitors will now be able to see for themselves. Okay, so you get the idea. Now, she said this was very enlightening. She said it was just so interesting to read. So we have The Breaking of Eggs. We'll see if that makes it. I don't know. Okay, the next two on the list you have all heard plenty about, so I'm not going to say that much about it. So the first one is this one, which is My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. So I don't need to tell you about that because it's everywhere. I'm going to keep it moving on that one. And the next one, Americanah by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. You've heard all about this one. You've heard about it from me. You've heard it by countless booktubers. So I'm going to keep it moving. The next one on the list is Mr. Pip by Lloyd Jones. This one, I don't remember. I think it was somebody that I follow on Goodreads. I had talked about this book and they didn't like it, but they couldn't remember why it was it didn't like it. A couple people said they didn't like this book. And I don't know what to say. It says for the just so you can know what it's about. It says that Lloyd Jones weaves a transcendent story that celebrates the resilience of the human spirit and the power of narrative to transform our lives. On a copper-rich tropical island shattered by war, where the teachers have fled with most everyone else. Only one white man chooses to stay behind, the eccentric Mr. Watts, object of much curiosity and scorn, who sweeps out the ruined schoolhouse and begins to read to the children each day from Charles Dickens' classic, Great Expectations. So begins this rare original story about the abiding strength that imagination once ignited can provide. Okay, so yeah, you get, like, so evidently, if you haven't read, I would say evidently, if you haven't read Great Expectations, this might be a no-go, because I guess you'll miss some of the meaning behind the story. But yeah, this is one that I've seen, it's mixed reviews. I'm not so sure about that one. The next one on the list is a book called Freeze Frame. Okay, Freeze Frame is by Peter May, and it is like a detective thriller story, but the only problem I have with this one is, okay, it's a part of a series called the Enzo Files, and it's actually book number 4. So I don't know, people, I'm not even going to bother to tell you what it's about, because, if you know how detective novels can be in series and stuff, there can always be like little, things that if you don't know them because you didn't read the first 3 books, that you're going to be a little, like off kilter with it and everything. But yeah, so this one was suggested. I'm not sure why they suggested book number 4 if we haven't read any other ones. So maybe it doesn't matter. I really don't know, because I've never heard of it before. If you've heard of Peter May, Enzo Files is the name of the series. Drop me a line below and, tell me what you think about it, because I don't really know. All right, next on the list, let's see, we have, is Saving Fish from Drowning by Amy Tan. Now, Amy Tan, everybody knows Amy Tan. I personally haven't read anything by Amy Tan, but I do have the Joy Luck Club on my bookshelves to read, and hope to get to that one. But I have heard that this is also an interesting read, although I have heard this is not one of her best. So I don't know. We'll see if it gets chosen. Next on the list, I have Her Fearful Symmetry. Now that's this one I have on my bookshelf, and it's by Audrey Neffenegger. There are 2 conditions for this inheritance: that they live in the flat for a year before they sell it, and that their parents not enter it. Julia and Valentina are twins. So were the girls' Aunt Elspeth and their mother Edie. The girls moved to Elspeth's flat, which borders at the vast Highgate Cemetery, where Christina Rossetti, George Eliot, Stella Gibbons, and other luminaries are buried. Julia and Valentina become involved with their living neighbors, Martin, a composer of crossword puzzles, who suffers from crippling OCD, and Robert, Elspeth's elusive lover, a scholar of the cemetery. They also discover that much is still alive in Highgate, including perhaps their aunt. So I feel like this has a little bit of mystery and maybe some elements of magical realism and, things like that. So I really don't know. It's just maybe just under 400 pages. I can't say that I know anyone who's read it, and I haven't heard anyone on my corner of BookTube talking about having read that, or if they did, I missed their reviews. So anyway, we will see. Okay, next on the list we have Family Life by Achille Sharma. This is a novel by an Indian writer, and this one is intriguing me a bit, so I might actually vote for this one. But it says, hailed as a supreme storyteller for his cunning, dismaying, and beautifully conceived fiction, Achille Sharma is possessed of a narrative voice as hypnotic as those found in the pages of Dostoevsky, The Nation. In his highly anticipated second novel, Family Life, he delivers a story of astonishing intensity and emotional precision. We meet the Mishra family in Delhi in 1978, where 8-year-old Ajay and his older brother Birju play cricket in the streets, waiting for the day when their plane tickets will arrive and they and their mother can fly across the world and join their father in America. America to the Mishras is indeed everything they could have imagined and more. When automatic glass doors open before them, they feel that surely they must have been mistaken for somebody important. Pressing an elevator button and the elevator closing its doors and rising, they have a feeling of power at the fact that the elevator is obeying them. Okay, so this sounds like one of those, it sounds like a type of immigrant story, maybe not one that we're used to reading. So yeah, so that was, I don't even know this writer. I've never heard of Achille Shama. If you've heard of Achille Shama, drop me a line below and tell me, yeah, check it out if you thought that, Family Life was good. But I'm already intrigued, just from reading, what is on Goodreads about, about what the book's about. Next on the list, we have Nora Webster by Colm Tobin. This one, I think it came out 2 years ago, Nora Webster, if I remember correctly. And I don't remember seeing that many people review it. But I think I have it on audiobook, Nora Webster, to check out. So I might be just, listening to it on audiobook, which I don't do very frequently, is listen to audiobooks. And if I do, I usually listen to it and read along at the same time, because I find all that, my brain can't cope with that. It can't cope with, I mean, I can read, I can understand it and everything, but it's just, my brain creeps out on me and just, leaves me out to lunch on some of the more important aspects, because I'm not actually physically looking at the book, actually reading it myself. But this one is set in Wexford, Ireland, and in breathtaking Ballyconnegar by the sea. Colm Tobin's tour de force 8th novel introduces the formidable, memorable Nora Webster. Widowed at 40 with four children and not enough money, Nora has lost the love of her life, Morris, the man who rescued her from the stifling world she was born into. Wounded and self-centered from grief and the need to provide for her family, she struggles to be attentive to her children's needs and their own difficult loss. Okay, and it says, in masterfully detailing the intimate lives of one small family, Tobin has given us a vivid portrait of time and an intricately woven tapestry of lives in a small town. Okay, so yeah, I mean, it sounds like it could be interesting. I'm not sure if if it's gonna rock my world like that. But who knows? We'll see if that gets chosen. Okay, next on the list is, you've heard this because it's all over, BookTube, the blogs, everywhere, is Eligible by Curtis Sittenfeld. That is, somebody also suggested that one. And Curtis Sittenfeld. And, so it's a retelling of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. I'm kind of tired of reading that, but whatever, Pride and Prejudice, I've read it, I think, twice. I read Bridget Jones. I'm good. I don't need to read any more, of that. But anyway. Okay, next on the list is Black Water by Joyce Carol Oates. I have a book here, but, this was an old copy. I picked it up at a book sale in Paris. It's in excellent condition. I think it's only been read once. No jacket. That's the only problem. This one is so it says, Kelly Keller is an idealistic 26-year-old good girl when she meets the senator of a 4th of July party. In a brilliantly woven narrative, we enter her past and her present, her mind and her body, as she is fatally attracted to this older man, this hero, this soon-to-be lover. Kelly becomes the very embodiment of the vulnerable romantic dreams of bright and brave women, drawn to the power that certain men command at a party that takes on the quality of a surreal nightmare in a tragic car ride against hope will not end as we know it must end. One of the acknowledged masters of American fiction, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so, I don't know. I have it, so I'll read it, and it's quite short. It's 154 pages. So I haven't heard very many people speak of this one, so I'm gonna go with this. It's probably not one of Joyce Carol Oates' best, but hey, whatever, it might be good. I'll eventually read it. If I don't read it for this book club 2016, I'll read it at some point. Next on the list, I have Elizabeth is Missing by Emma Healy. Now this is one, I think it came out, it was either last year or, no, I think it was last year, Elizabeth is Missing. And so Elizabeth is Missing is a book that is based on an old woman and her desire to find her friend who she believes is missing. And apparently the author wrote this story inspired by newspaper articles that she read about old people being taken advantage of in different situations, and it sparked her this idea to write Elizabeth is Missing. So I think I own this one on audiobook, so if it gets picked, I will be listening to it. And last but not least on my list, I have The Restoration of Otto Laird by Nigel Thacker. Okay, this one was suggested, and I personally have never heard of Nigel Thacker, nor have I heard of The Restoration of Otto Laird. Now, you're probably thinking, well, what's this all about? So, this one, it says, okay, retired architect Otto Laird is living a peaceful, if slightly bemused existence in Switzerland with his second wife, Annika. Once renowned for his radical designs, Otto now spends his days communing with nature and writing eccentric letters to old friends, which he doesn't mail. But Otto's comfortable life is rudely interrupted when he learns that his most significant and revolutionary building, Marlow House, a 1960s tower block estate in South London, is set to be demolished. Otto is outraged. Determined to do everything in his power to save the building, he reluctantly agrees to take part in a television documentary, which will mean returning to London for the first time in 25 years to live for a week in Marlow House. Once Otto becomes reacquainted with the city he called home for most of his life, his memories begin to come alive. And as he minds his past and considers life moving forward for himself and his building, Otto embarks on a remarkable journey that will change everything he ever thought he knew. Okay, so that has a little bit of a philosophical, meaning to it, like, what is it to remember your work or whatever you did as work as an older person, in the past and all this kind of thing. So I don't really know. I haven't heard anybody talk about it. I've never heard of this book before. So, I'll have to sit down and really think about 7 books I'm going to vote for next year, because that's what we have to do, to vote for 7 books. So I will come back in June at some point, because our last book club, I think, is June 11th. And I will come back and give you the results. Now, I could do something really cool and say, okay, let's see if you can guess what the results will be, but you don't know the people that are in my book club, so that'll be a little bit difficult. But why don't you, drop me a line below and tell me some of the ones you would vote for if you had the chance to vote, or to try to persuade me to vote for certain books. So that's all I have for you today. I'll be back real soon with another video. Bye.